Hello, everyone. Welcome to our music talk from McNally here at McNally Robinson on Treaty 6 territory, homeland of the Métis people. I'm Mark with the SSO. Everybody sort of knows that by this point. This is our guest conductor this week, the incredible Rune Bergmann. Rune, welcome to Saskatoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you for welcoming a Viking here.
Exactly.
I'm one of the last ones from Norway, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I, we were talking about my family heritage is Norwegian, so we have much in common. I when I'm with you, I feel like I'm with my people.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And you have to come and visit also.
Yes,
so,
yes. I have not been, so I'll do that next. Anyone watching at home, you can feel free to add your questions in the chat. They are magically, through the magic of technology, sent to my phone, so we can add them into the conversation. And we'll have questions here at the end for everyone in person here at McNally. This is your first time in Saskatoon.
It is.
It's unseasonably warm.
I'm glad.
But you're from Norway, so this shouldn't really be that.
No, I mean, it's not too bad, but I would say that Norway is quite similar to here, actually. Depends where you are in Norway. I mean, some places, 0 degrees or +2 or -2 could feel actually colder than -20. So it all depends where you are. Yeah. So I guess it's the same here as well. So, but I'm glad you brought the nice weather for me.
Yeah, very nice weather. Freakishly so. You are here this week. We're doing The Idea of North is the name of this concert. I'm not sure if Glenn Gould, the Canadian pianist, did a documentary in 1967 called The Idea of North. And so that was sort of, all of our concerts this winter are actually about music from the North. So we had a few weeks ago, we did an ABBA show, the Swedish sensations. We were actually workshopping a brand new opera by a Saskatoon composer, Danica Loren, and it was based on Hedda Gabler. And now this week we've got this, in a couple of weeks' time we've got more. Like it's a lot of the North, because we figured we might as well embrace winter, and then winter let us down, because really this should have been the coldest week of the year, and that was the whole point of bringing this warm, passionate music to the cold. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Now, you are the music director at the Calgary Philharmonic and other places as well. How many years have you been in Calgary?
So I think I've been there now 6-7 years in Calgary, and I've been lucky to combine that with a similar position in Poland and also a similar position in Switzerland. I wasn't supposed to have 3 positions, 3 orchestra positions, but then when I was supposed to leave one, the pandemic hit, and then you couldn't really leave anyone behind. So at the moment, I'm stuck with 3 orchestras and 2 festivals, but I cannot complain. I do what I love. The only thing, I'm not sure if my wife and kids agree, but I see them sometimes. I do.
That's fair. And you also do a lot of guest conducting.
I do. And this is, of course, important as well as conductor. You have to travel around and get inspired. So I will always hopefully I bring something to this orchestra this week, but the orchestra will also bring something to me. And I think this is what the magic with music. It's its own language, and we can bring it anywhere in the world. And we learn from each other and we develop. And I think that's so important, especially how the world is right now. We need to adjust and develop both musically, but also as humans.
Yeah. How do you keep track of life on the road? Now, so when I picked you up from the airport, you had been traveling for 24 hours straight, and you had just gotten home for like less than 24 hours after like 4 or 5 weeks of travel, and now you've got a few more weeks of travel. How do you keep track of life? How do you keep track of your suitcase? How do you not lose your suitcase? Frankly, that's a big one.
I mean, actually, I would say more after the pandemic than before. I've lost my suitcase, and I think the airports just has been not getting back in shape in a way. So I always have carry-ons that brings the most important things. Like, so at least some clean clothes for the first 2-3 days. And then I always bring my conducting suit with me. Because as you can see, I'm a big guy. it's not every store that has my size if I lose my suit. So just some practical things. So I basically travel with the things I need for 2-3 days, my conducting suit and my tennis racket, and that's all I need.
So that was the first thing you said to me when literally, like, we had our hellos and where can I play tennis? So is this new? Have you always done this when you travel, or?
This is actually new after the pandemic. I changed a little bit after the pandemic because I think we need to, sometimes the brain need to rest a little bit. And also I've always done sports from when I was a kid. But then when I went all into this conducting and traveling, that took all of my time. And I realized that I got more exhausted if I focused too much on that and didn't have any break from it. So actually coming to any town and any country, and the first thing I check out if we can play tennis with someone, that brings me also something else, and I actually get more energy from it. So it's been interesting after the pandemic, but I'm so glad that we are back and that we can see each other and actually come back to concerts and that we can travel again. So I can't complain, even though I travel a lot.
And I can imagine that, like, playing tennis would help kind of normalize all the travel, and that, like, I know our friend who's with us this week, Jan Lisiecki, he you'll know he goes for these walks before a concert or hikes, and he often will take me along, and I'm not a hiker, but God bless him, and it's that fresh air, it's that getting moving, it's doing something completely other than just your job.
Absolutely. I think it just makes us more focused somehow to not focus on what we're going to do. Because I think artists like us, we know exactly what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, but the inspiration to bring this to the next level will be different from each city, from each country, and each day. Yeah. So I think this just makes us focused in a different way. But as you said, with the travels, it's interesting though, because it has changed also a lot that now we have smartphones, we can travel with iPads. So basically, as long as I have my phone and a pair of headsets, I can go anywhere. So it has changed a lot since I started traveling as a conductor, when you actually had to bring CDs. I needed a full suitcase just for that and for my scores. Now sometimes I just conduct from the iPad. Yep. So technology has helped a lot to make it easier doing what we do across the borders. So
it's also wrecked things because a lot of us then just always work. Right?
That's
because it facilitates the work then. Absolutely. You can answer emails in the air now, and that's weird and frustrating. So I do the same thing. I get on a plane and log into the Wi-Fi, and you get to do some work because you can't do anything else for 3 hours or 4 hours. And so it is interesting how that actually has, and so to use it for good is an important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes as everyone in life, we have things we love to do and we would like to do a lot. And when I'm home, I have my favorite things to do. And the boring stuff is not the most interesting to do when you actually have your time off. So what I realized when I was traveling for 24 hours, I combined sleeping a little bit on the planes and actually doing the stuff I don't like to do, because you're wasting the time anywhere. You have to travel from A to B, and you might as well do the stuff you don't like so much. So for me, these travels is now more, actually I get a lot done that I normally wouldn't get done. So
my staff will tell you that I think they sort of dread when I'm flying somewhere, because all of a sudden I can do so much.
This is actually when they get answers. Yeah?
So many things, emails and questions. Yeah, because I'm not taking phone calls or I'm not in meetings, and so you're just focused. And it is getting the stuff you didn't want to do done. Our concert this weekend is two of the titans of Scandinavian music with Grieg and Sibelius. Let's talk first about Sibelius. The Sibelius Symphony No. 1 is it's wound so tight it could explode at any moment. It has that constant energy, and we were having a conversation earlier about how it sucks you in. And he, unlike many composers, he doesn't feel the need to let you go right away. He kind of makes you wait for that in this, and that even though he was quite young, that shows a unique maturity in his sound.
So he makes you suffer inside the dark Finnish woods for a while. No, but I mean it's amazing with this music. I would say that his 7 symphonies, and he has a lot of tone poems, and of course his great Finlandia that many knows. Every time you start listening to Sibelius, you can immediately hear it's him. There's something about the harmonies, the way he writes. Of course, he changed his orchestration, especially from the 1st to the 7th symphony. I think he just got older and wiser and just figured out that we can't use the trombones for everything. And this is, I think, a natural development of a composer. But to have the 1st symphony in such a level, that's not a bad start for a composer. And in a way, it might be one of the, I mean, the 2nd symphony is probably the most famous. Then the 7th one is just magical, but it doesn't have that audience appeal. The 1st one brings us into, I would say, harmonies and a melody world that you only could find with Rachmaninoff, Tchaikovsky, those composers. So I would say he's kind of the I would say the European, Scandinavian, Nordic writer of the big lines and the big melodies. And
his music is very different than other Scandinavian composers in the sense that you can hear that influence of that lush romantic sound. I mean, he was a big fan of Bruckner's, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And there will be on the concert you will hear moments where he actually, the entire string section plays a melodic line while the winds and brass do something else, and it's extremely powerful. It's just not the most challenging and difficult, but it's just very powerful when you have the entire string section play a theme. So this is where he's unique, and you can hear, I mean, both him and Grieg are so inspired by nature. And I studied at the Sibelius Academy in Finland, and this is when I realized how different this country is from Norway. Even though we're neighbors, we're friends. But it's a total different way of living, a total different nature in a way. You have the dark woods, and I would say that Sibelius goes straight into your soul. So if you listen to this music in the right way and get sucked into it, I think that many would say, oh, Sibelius, it's a little bit heavy. Like many have this opinion about Bruckner as well. But if you let Bruckner in, it's the same. If you let Sibelius in, you will actually see a movie. And for people that don't know much about Sibelius, I said it could easily have been the music for Harry Potter movie. It was just written a long time ago, and now you have the chance to have your own movie. Well, if you listen to it, open your ears and relax and breathe, you will see pictures and emotions that you might not even knew existed.
And I mean, it is movie music. I mean, you can hear the influence he had on people like John Williams and Alexandre Desplat. Like you can hear how they used those colors to be cinematic, because he was writing cinematic music before there was cinema. That's a fascinating, and I think that is actually what's so attractive about it.
Yeah, and I think that many composers those days did that, and I think maybe the purpose of the music was in a way that. Now, later we added the movie to it, and that's great. We all love to watch a movie sometimes, but I think it also took away one of the senses that we have inside us, and I think this is where classical music. It's been discussed so many times. Okay, well, is classical music dying? What is happening? I would say that this is the reason why we always will need classical music, because at some point in life we just need to sit down, relax, and listen and feel this. And if we let this in, it's like balsam for the soul. It's what really makes so even though the music is a little bit dark and sometimes a bit dramatic, you still feel so much better when you come out of it somehow.
Well, and dark, but also heroic. You feel, I was so thrilled when you suggested the symphony. It's been a long time since it's been done here, and my favorite Sibelius symphony is 5. That's just a personal. I like those swans, and inside joke. Sorry, it's never mind. You'll learn more in the future, and. So I was re-listening to this a couple of weeks ago, and there is a heaviness, and there is a, but it's also deeply heroic, deeply romantic. Like there are sweeping melodies in this that are so, they're not even the adventure film cinematic. They're like romance film moments where someone's running up the steps and the music goes with them. Like he was incredible at writing a melody that moved us.
Absolutely, and also I would say heroic, but also nationalistic. Like somehow I think that, Finland has been through quite a history, protecting themselves during wars and so on, and that's something I feel in general when I come to Finland, that the Finnish people, they are proud of being from Finland, and they protect themselves, and they're proud of their neighbors, and I think this is something extremely unique in Finland that we should all learn of. And if we look at the school system in Finland, it is probably the best in the world. Mm-hmm. And what they do is not magic. They just actually have respect for each other, tolerance, and they treat people nicely, and with the respect. And I think that looking to Finland in so many ways, we can learn a lot from that. And you can hear this in the music as well. Like basically when he wrote Finlandia, that was more or less like the unofficial national anthem of Finland. The same things you can hear in all his music, that he's proud of his country and proud of his people. So I think that's very touching.
Yeah. Musically, the clarinet opens, gives us this melody that he then, there's hints of it throughout. It's such an incredible, he is such a manipulator of sound that way. And he gives us this timpani, which is just sensational. It's this drone that really makes you feel something, and not just you're emotional, but like you physically start to feel that drone of the timpani, and it's fascinating the way he orchestrated things. He was brilliant orchestrator, and that I think is why that music is still so emotional all these years later, and still so well written all these years later. And he actually, like you said, it's that nationalistic sound. I mean, he is the sort of the first big figure outside of Finland to the rest of the world musically. When he died, like the UN stopped and had a moment of silence for him, and they said he belongs to all of humanity. He really had such a profound impact, and also lived for forever compared to most composers. He died of it at a ripe old age.
And I think also it has a lot to do that he's still so relevant, is that the Finnish people make him relevant. And I remember when I started my studies and I came there for the very first time, I had no idea where to go. So I jumped into a taxi. And this was not even a Finnish driver. And he asked me, so where do you want to go? Oh, please drive me to the Sibelius Academy. And he immediately started singing the main theme of the second symphony. That is like, he was whistling and he was singing, and he was so proud of being in Finland that had Sibelius and so on. So I think this is quite unique, that they are proud of these melodies, and they whistle them, they sing them, and they know them.
Yeah.
And how this will be in the future, I don't know, but at least up to now, they have been taking very well care of this.
Yeah, and there's a pride about all Scandinavian composers kind of across Scandinavia. I was in Gothenburg last spring at the Gothenburg Symphony in their beautiful hall, and there's the statue of Sibelius, the statue of Grieg. Like they're such icons to the culture of all of Scandinavia. So that is a great bridge to Grieg, because is there a composer who captured with that much imagination the sound of his country?
I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier in our conversation, that behind these great giants, there was always almost, or maybe sometimes even better composers, but somehow they became representative of their countries. So Finland has a lot of other great composers as well.
Kaija Saariaho.
Yes, and Rautavaara,
yes.
and like a lot of great composers that I love performing. In Norway, Grieg became such a famous person. I would say, of course, he's a great composer, but he became part of the people. He went around and listened to folk music, and folk musicians were whistling, they were singing, they were humming, and he wrote down these themes. And it's actually so many funny stories of this, and I can actually, I'll tell one of them, because he had a friend visiting, and they came up a hill, and they heard someone singing a beautiful song, and this was this young woman that was taking care of the cows and the sheeps up there in Norway, and she was singing for them. And Grieg was so inspired by this melody, and now it's called Jendines Bondlåt. So it's just very simple melody, but it's stunning beautifully. And basically the stories, if they're true or not, I can't say, but he took a piece of paper, and basically on the back or on the ass of the cow, he put this piece of paper and he started writing this melody down as soon as when he could remember it. And then they run down the hill, and then he wrote one of the most famous compositions ever. So this is a little bit typically Grieg. He would listen around with, and I think this is why all Norwegians can relate to him somehow. Like he took care of a tradition that was in danger of actually getting forgotten. Yeah. But then, of course, he combined this with his own composition skills, and that made such great pieces. And the piano concerto is one of the most played, one of the most loved, and one of the most unique piano concertos in the world. Not because it's so difficult to play, but because it has such a unique, I would say, landscape in it. Yeah. And I'm lucky to be born. I always blamed my parents when I was a kid, because I was born in the middle of nowhere. So I wasn't excited about it then. Now I knew and understand that I was born in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And this is probably what shaped me into what I am today. And this is probably why I love Strauss and Bruckner and the big romantic music. But at the time, it was difficult for me actually to get lessons and to study music, because we only had the folk music tradition. But then I see, when I kind of got the classical tradition later, to be coming from that folk music tradition was actually great, because you do music in a natural, effortless way somehow. And it's not that the music is easy, but somehow it's in your blood. And I think this is why I'm thankful that I got that experience. And growing up in the waterfalls, basically standing on top of a mountain, looking straight down in the fjords. So I would say Canadian landscape is quite similar, but the difference is mostly that the mountains go straight into the fjord. So it's a little bit more rough, and this is captured in Grieg's music everywhere. You can hear the waterfalls. So this is where Sibelius and Grieg are different. I would say Grieg is more bright. It's more cheerful somehow, while Sibelius is a little bit more dark and deep. They still kind of accomplish the same goal. Yeah. It's just different countries. It's just a different color.
And because Grieg tells often more literal stories, naming pieces exactly that. All the calling pieces that he has for piano. I mean, there are, and he also was such a master of the miniature. Like Sibelius, we think of those incredible 7 symphonies and all of those tone poems. Grieg, didn't write a whole lot for large orchestra. But the massive amount of piano pieces, and everybody knows the lyric pieces, but all of the other folk songs and dances and all of those pieces that he put together are all so incredible, and they do capture stories and pictures and images and of times that were current, but also times that were past. As you were talking, I was sitting there going, when you were saying you were born in the middle of nowhere, I'd like to argue I was born in the middle of nowhere. And there's some folks from Elrose here tonight. Giselle can actually, quite literally, Lacadina, Saskatchewan is almost the precise middle of nowhere. But I think there is something about growing up in those rural spaces and having that relationship to nature in a different way than kids in the cities do, because you can. you have the time to. You are removed from the busyness of other things, and I think that actually, you hear that in Grieg's music, and not just in the miniatures. I mean, in that opening of the concerto and in the last movement, I mean, you hear how he tells stories about fjords and like he was such a painter of pictures.
Yeah, it's amazing, and since we are now competing about who's born in the middle of most in middle and over. No, but for me it was actually very interesting also, because I think coming from a place like this, we get used to, I wouldn't say fight, but we have to look out for things, and maybe it made us more curious and adventurous would be the word. Because for me, there was nowhere to study there. So actually, this is a long time ago now. But I had to go to the capital in Oslo to do studies, and I was lucky that I was discovered when I was around 12, 13 years old. So my parents had to send me there, and this was before the cell phones, and it was not easy. So I have a huge respect for working hard to accomplish things, and when looking back on it, it was a beautiful journey, and it's interesting because I came basically then from seeing no conductors to be able to sit every second week with the Oslo Philharmonic and watch conductors like Herbert Blomstedt, Marius Janssons, and all these great world conductors, and that shaped me more or less. I would say the combination of these things, the nature and seeing these fantastic artists, shaped me into what I am today. Yeah. So it was a nice journey.
And it's amazing the impact that those kinds of experiences with orchestras, with concert musicians, and in those concerts can really shape young people in a dramatic way, and thank goodness they did. Now, this weekend on the program with you, we're joined by our friend Jan Lisiecki, who is we were just out for supper, and we were trying to explain to the waitress that he's not just because we're friends with him, he's legitimately one of the biggest pianists in the world, and he's such a superstar. He's so fun to work with, both on stage and off. He brings such a sense of joy to everything he does. You've worked with him a number of times. You've done this concerto with him a number of times. What's it like getting to continue that relationship on and on?
It's interesting though, because with Jan, I think this will be our 4th or 5th time doing the Grieg Concerto, and I can promise you it's going to be a totally
completely different.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you never know. He keeps the conductors on their feet, and this is what makes it fresh. And I with some artists, it's a little bit routine, and you know what's going to come and so on. With Jan, this is always a journey into the unknown, and I think this is. But you always know it's going to be great. It just depends how and where. And what's going to happen. So it's I think for the audience, just watching him is an exercise in itself. Like I always see the audience like, oh, is this going to go well? Oh, he really digs into it. So he gives all he got, and I just love that energy to perform with him.
He's one of the few artists that truly lives in the moment when he's on stage. Because I'm not, I've spent a lot of time watching him play, and over the years, I actually was there the night he did his very first Grieg concerto, so he invited me to come to rehearsal the night before, so I went, and it was the first rehearsal, so it's bits and bobs, and you're coming back and you're circling. I'm going, oh, okay, and also he sort of lets the orchestra have the first rehearsal, like he's not. And then there was dress rehearsal, and then the concert, and I said to him afterwards, does it go like that? Because it was so different than I had heard it in my head so many times. The accents, the little manipulation of rhythm, it's not that he's changed the rhythm. It's just that he was hearing the rhythm in a slightly different way. And, I've seen him play it, I don't know, 3 or 4 times since then. And it's different every single time from night to night, because he is in the moment and he's exploring the music live with you. And I think that is what is so powerful about his playing. And on top of that, then he brings that sensational tone at the instrument with him, which is just, it's his trademark.
What I also appreciate is that there is no safing. Like, I've never seen him save anything, and that's quite rare because all artists are afraid of playing wrong notes, or what if something happens? What if I even break the piano? He couldn't care less. No. He goes all in, good or bad, and this is so refreshing. Yeah. I think especially today, because not all artists. I think a little bit also because of how the world has developed, we are afraid of doing mistakes. Well, actually, the mistakes are what brings us further into new things. He's not afraid of anything. At least he seems like he's not. So this is, and I think also with the Grieg and Sibelius, there are probably more interpretations about these composers than there are performers and conductors in the world. And for sure, the way I do the Sibelius Symphony is probably different than many other conductors. We have the framework, but then I am also an artist that feel a lot in the moment. It depends on the orchestra, on the acoustic, and how I basically can feel the audience breathe behind me. And that sometimes inspire me to go different directions and so on. And I many years ago, I worked in a German opera house, and this is when I figured out that no evening will ever be the same. And I came in there, and by the first chord of the orchestra, I could feel like, oh, wow, this is going to be a long evening. Because if they are on the tired side, maybe they have done this opera for the 20th time just in a very short while, they might not be very inspired. So then it's up to me to actually get this in a different direction. Sometimes I actually just take a faster tempo just to shock them a little bit, and suddenly they're back on track. So sometimes you can do small things to wake them up. And sometimes I do the first chorus like, whoa, okay, we need to calm down. So me as a conductor, I would say the most interesting part of my job is actually to feel what is going to happen now. Do they need me more or less? Do they need me to be inspiring, or do they need me to calm down and keep things under control? And this is always fresh. Every day something new. So,
well, and the two of you together is going to be quite. I've seen the two of you together. It's quite the experience, because you are sharing the energy of the whole room. Before we go to questions, as you said, Jan is really not afraid of things. So in his very first performance here in Saskatoon in 2010, he was 15. He did the complete Chopin Etudes. Opus 10 in the first half, Opus 25 in the second. So, he did them reversed. Anyway, so he had messed up one of the etudes. He'd skipped a bar in the first half. And I want to say it was Winter Wind. Anyway, so he skipped a bar in the first half, and I went backstage. I was producing the concert, so I could. I went backstage at intermission, and he's sitting at the little beat up piano is a very strong word for what that instrument was, in the back of the church, and he's sitting there drilling Winter Wind, and I'm like, I'm as a pianist, I'm thinking, oh God, that's going to ruin your brain, right? Because you'll get stuck in it. He walked out and started the second half of the concert by saying, if you'd indulge me, I'd like to play the etude Winter Wind the way the composer had written it. And he sat down and played it again. And I will never forget that, because as a musician, I mean, that's suicide. Because you like the way your brain works as a pianist, you don't go back out and try and do that. And he doesn't have that fear, and he really did want to bring the music out. Like it was such a need for him to make sure that he did it the way it was meant to be done. It was such an incredible moment, and so it is that fearless.
Yeah, and I think this is probably the thing that is really unique with him. Like, this is why he's different from anyone else. So it may really takes him to a different level.
Yeah. We've got a few people here in the crowd. Any questions for our incredible maestro? None. Do we have any? This is rare.
Can ask me anything.
Anything.
So it's like I feel that you have something you want to ask, but you're not sure if you wanted to ask it. There is no bad questions here.
Oh.
When was it kind of like clear to you that was the route you were taking? Was it always kind of your family was musical and kind of, you were always surrounded by it, or was it very much something you explored on your own?
So for the folks at home, I'm going to repeat the question. The question is like, when was it clear to you that you were going to become a musician, or you needed to become a musician?
This is a great question, and now this is going to take a while. No, I'm trying to do the short story. Very good question. So basically, I was, I think, around 8 years old, and of some reason, my parents are not musicians. But they love music. So my father played in the local band. He played the trumpet. My mother was singing in the local choir. And so I have a brother. He's 8 years older than me. And he had a similar situation. So I remember we went to church once, and the church organ started. He was a very young kid. And he just turns to my parents and says, I'm going to be an organist. So this was my brother. It was just like in that moment. Wow. So this is what he does. He is a conductor for choirs and an organist. Then I was about 8 years old, and I remember my father, this was the January 1st, so this is the New Year's concert from Vienna. And my father woke me up, said, there is a concert on TV, would you like to see it? So I went in, and this was the year when Carlos Kleiber was conducting, and he started with the Fledermaus Overture by Strauss. And I think like 10 seconds into that overture, just watching his hands, how he moved in a very specific way, I just turned to my parents and said, this is what I want to do in life. And of course, my parents, they are very interesting in a way, because they actually took it seriously, even though I was a kid. So this is when the journey started. They start researching, how can you actually become a conductor? Because in Norway at the time, it wasn't even an education. So, and this is when I was advised that you need to become a great musician first. You have to learn all kinds of instruments and understand how it is to be a top-level musician, and then you can continue the journey. So so when I went to Oslo to study when I was young, every second week, they were teaching me theory, air training, instruments, all these things I couldn't get at home. And also I got the opportunity to sit. I always was sitting by the timpanist and watching the conductors. And this is actually the moments that changed my life in a way. And I don't know if you know Herbert Blomstedt, but he was many years chief conductor of the San Francisco Symphony. And he started in Sweden as an organist, actually. And it is a funny story, because somehow he had his score and his baton in the luggage, and the luggage was lost. And the librarian at the Oslo Philharmonic saw me, and I always had those things with me. So she came running up and said, oh, can the maestro borrow your score and your baton? And then I said as a joke, yes, if he can sign it afterwards, and I would love to meet him. I said it more as a joke. Then she came back after the rehearsal, gave me a signed baton, and then she said, the maestro is ready for you. So I met him for a few hours, and Blomstedt is quite a shy personality, so it's not that easy. But I could ask him anything, and I said, how can you become a conductor? Because it's not easy to get through that little opening. And he just said, do as I did. Find the worst possible low-level orchestra, become their chief conductor, make them good, then you know what it takes. If you survive that, you know it. So it was a long journey, but it all started when I was very young and got inspired by Carlos Kleiber. That was kind of my first inspiration as conductor.
I'm going to take one more question. It comes from online. You're sort of a walking tourism ad for your home of Norway. Where the question is, what's the must-see or do thing in Norway?
So the area I come from, the most famous area there is the Geiranger Fjord. So this is basically where the tourist ships, like in summer, I guess like probably 10 ships a day almost goes into this fjord. So that's a must thing to do. And the closest city there is Ålesund. And this is in the fjord where I run my festival Fjord Cadenza that goes every year. And there you can actually, if you come with plane or other things, there go a ship called Hurtigruten in Norway. So you can basically take that from the city of Ålesund, 3 hours trip between the mountains inside the fjords and see that. So that's where you just have to go. But there are many places, but that's a must.
Amazing. Thank you, Rune, for being here this week. Thank you so much to everybody here at McNally Robinson. Thank you to our incredible stream team, Yash and Ricardo, for pulling this all together. Have a great week with the orchestra.
Thanks for having me, and I can't wait to see you all in the concert.
And we'll see you on Saturday.
Be amazing.
It is, actually, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. There we go. We did it.